All right, and we're live at Expert35. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, with Expert35 as promised. 35 different industries, expert from each industry, talking about the challenges, the hardships, and the opportunities. And no better expert than today we have Beth Revere, expert mediator. Beth, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Gabe. I'm excited.
It's such an important time. People are going through all kinds of challenges. This is putting so much pressure, right? It's putting pressure on businesses, on family, on friendships. And on top of that, like we're also seeing, everything happened while we're reopening. Now there's more social, pressures there's a separation. And it's even tough with everything that's happening with some of the protests and even the riots. So I couldn't think of anybody more timely to come talk to us. So Beth, thanks for joining us on Expert35 this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your experience. You've 29 years. I mean, you've been in this, you've been a lawyer, you've gotten into this. Tell us a little bit of how you got into it and why you're here.
Well, as an attorney, over the years, I was able to mediate an awful lot as an advocate for my client. And I came to realize that really the best resolution of almost every case that was mediated was handled as a mediated agreement, with the parties coming together and making their own decisions instead of going all the way through and litigating and spending all that money and time and then not having any control over the decision. And I just came to see that I felt I could help people more as a facilitator, somebody to help them work through their own problems rather than as an advocate fighting about their problems. And that's why I became a mediator about 5 years ago.
And it's so true that everything can be resolved.
Oh, yes.
Right.
And it's going to be resolved one way or another, whether you have control over it or not.
So, one of the big questions was like, well, what's the benefits of mediation? And it's because it's not a fight, right? Tell us a little bit of what's the benefit.
Well, it depends on whether you're in litigation or you're pre-litigation. There are benefits in both. I find them to be even greater pre-litigation, but obviously with litigation, you're reducing your attorney's fees, you're getting yourself some autonomy over how you handle things. You can be creative in a way that a court can never be creative. And all of those benefits go to the pre-litigation stuff where there's even more freedom and there's more ability for you before there's even a real problem. Problems don't have to grow and accelerate before you start addressing them. And once you talk to people and once you get a basis for working through things with them, you have fewer and fewer problems.
Right. Right.
So that is a huge, and it's just the emotional toll that having an active conflict takes. It takes financial toll. It stresses you. It takes away from your work. It takes away from your quality of your relationships. You don't even realize it until it's not there. You're
Right.
so caught up in I'm just so mad and I want to get my way.
Right.
And we all do it. It's not every single human being does it.
And since you're not part of the equation, you can hear both sides of the equation. And sometimes you realize they both want different things and they can actually get both things without being in the same argument.
Absolutely. We get tunnel vision as human beings. We can only see our side of things. And we find it harder and harder to relate to other people and to see things from the outside. So, yeah, usually people can both get at least some of what they want, if not most of what they want.
Well, let's talk about the times that we're in, because life's changed, right? We don't have these outbursts where we can go out to, I'm an athlete, so playing soccer was my thing. I would go out and play soccer and get all my energy out and then come back and I'd be relaxed, right? Some people like to go out to eat. Some people like to go out to, bars and nightclubs. Or like everybody has their own, vice, for lack of a better word, to like get rid of all that pressure. We're in this pressure cooker, right? What are recommendations you would say for somebody that is having all that stress and they're like, the quality of life's not there? How would they take that step to go to a mediator? I mean, I'm assuming we're talking about a family and a partner. It's how do you have that conversation saying, hey, let's invite Beth, let's have a mediator?
Well, it can be an intimidating thing to hear, because it can sound accusatory if you don't phrase it correctly. One thing that a lot of people do is they maybe call and have a chat with the mediator and get some tips on how to present it. But one way that I have tried, with varying success, of course, is to say, I'm having a hard time with this, and I am having a hard time seeing my way to get through this without going down my own rabbit hole. And I would really like some help seeing things from other perspectives and finding ways to troubleshoot what we're going through, and maybe have a few tools to think of more creative solutions than we're thinking of.
Absolutely. Here's a great question from Jana. When should I get mediator involved in my dispute, which is what we just said? But what are these warning signs? So you said things like how to get, my question was how do we get you involved, but what are warning signs that maybe a mediator is a good fit?
I would say that when people start to become entrenched and when the dialogue is starting to grind to a halt. I mean, once it has completely stopped, you definitely might need a mediator, because that's when you're starting to look at litigation. But as you see it breaking down, that's when you should call and get a mediator in there, because then you could spend a few hours, a half-day session, work all of that stuff out and not have to worry about it again.
Right, because it takes it off your plate. Mediation is not a legal document. So actually, this is a great question, right? Here's, should mediation sessions take place now or wait until the courthouse opens? So let's talk a little bit about what is mediation. I think some people think it's like some sort of a legal process.
Well, it's a dialogue. That's the best way to. It is a dialogue between the people involved with whatever issue you're working with. At the end of a mediation, you do come to an agreement, and that is called a mediated settlement agreement. It is a contract. Everyone signs it. It's not full of legalese. It is really just the agreements of the parties, and it is enforceable as a contract. So, and with regard to family law, once that's done, it can't be changed without mediating again. But so you do have an enforceable contract after a mediation.
If you create a contract from the mediation, it's
Yes.
an enforceable. That's a great response, right? Because one of the things that people will think is, oh, I need to file with the court. No, you can do mediation with, even somebody that's not certified. I mean, you're certified and licensed. Tell us some of the certifications that you have, just so people understand. Like, because we've been talking about family, we've been talking about, people being sick. Go through that so people understand like how to choose a mediator, and these are the type of licensing or specific areas of expertise they need to have.
Well, in Texas, there's no licensing requirement for mediators, and you do not have to be an attorney. I do have a lot of certifications in mediation. I believe I have all of the ones that Texas offers. You do have to be certified to be a mediator. So there's your general mediation certificate, which is like a 40-hour training, I believe. It's been a while, so I don't remember how long I spent. I'm also certified to mediate family law cases. I am certified to mediate high conflict family law cases, family violence, CPS, and elder law situations where you have a family who's trying to deal with how to help their loved one who needs to, move on in their care or have a plan going forward about what their care should be. So those are some specialized areas of mediation that I'm also certified in.
And that's really important, because obviously with COVID and people having to deal with, long-term care and some of the other experts that we've had on the show, I think that's really timely. Got a great question from Jennifer Johnson. What issue do people mediate over the most?
Oh, yikes. It's crazy the kind of issues that people mediate over. There's such a diverse range, other than what I've mentioned that you need a certification for. I have had cases over attorney's fees. I have had homeowners association cases. I've had neighbors against neighbors. I've had personal injury car accidents, a tree falling on your swimming pool. I mean, it's kind of nuts. Credit card cases are a big one. Credit card cases, debt, landlord tenant. You can mediate almost anything. Employment coworker mediations. If you're an employer and you have two employees that are valuable to you and they're not getting along, that is likely very expensive, because unless they're of the mindset that I don't have to like you to be civil with you. I don't have to like you to work with you and be respectful towards you. We don't have to be friends. Unless they've got that down, they're generally probably sniping at each other and taking time away from what they should be doing, or trying to make the other person look bad, which always hurts an employer's bottom line. And it is so expensive to lose an employee and then have to, one, find somebody, get them in, retrain them, instead of getting a mediator in and working out what's the problem between the coworkers. Sometimes it's just a complete misunderstanding. Most of the time, it's a complete misunderstanding.
That's what I wanted to get to, is like most of the time it is just a misunderstanding. And you can't hear yourself because what you said earlier, the tunnel vision. I also wanted to drop in, one of our experts, Bradley, was talking about, hey, with COVID opening back up, you should have, one, you need to always have a contract with your employees, like a manual. And they need to sign that. And even if they've already been hired for decades or years or whatever, they can always sign a new contract. And it can have rules about how they're going to treat, how they're going to behave, like what are they expected if they're sick. But I think there's a great opportunity where some people all they need is mediation to understand that like it's there to protect them, or maybe go in their own way, but at least it avoids that conflict. I've got a great question all tied into this. Craig Levine wants to know, what is the minimum dollar amount that makes mediation worthwhile?
I don't think there has to be a dollar amount to make mediation worthwhile, especially when you're talking about a family issue. Just the fact that you're creating a better dynamic for your family moving forward. It's better for everyone, especially the young people in your family. Anytime there's any sort of a conflict, whether it's between parents and their siblings, between parents and grandparents, that is modeling behavior for children. So anytime that you can decrease active conflict, the payoff is immeasurable.
Right.
Immeasurable. And family law cases or family mediations are done a little bit different than necessarily others. Like the way that I do them is, when I do a half-day mediation, I just, the fee is just the fee, and the family can split it amongst themselves. Or if there's a situation where the family is in financial need, certainly, you take that into account. But there doesn't have to be a dollar amount at all for mediation to be worth it.
Absolutely, and I agree with you, because a lot of times it's just anger, right?
Yeah.
It's not money. You don't mediate to save money. You mediate to like save almost lives and your health. Many times. Here's a question we got.
Although I will say mediation does save money in almost any situation that involves money.
Well, yeah, especially if you don't have to go to court, right? And I can talk a little bit about our personal. I mean, I ended up going to mediation. We were going to federal court, and the mediation just dissolved everything. So we ended up not having to go to federal court. So the insurance covered it. So look at insurance. Now, I think only insurance covers it in some cases. We may have to chime in one of our experts, Jana, to see if insurance covers if you're just going to mediation. But if there's any type of legal action already, then some of your policies could cover it. You'd have to look into that. So, question for you. Everybody's focused on current situation, but what new problems do you think will arise as COVID-19 is over? Like, what do you think is going to be the next push of this release of everybody?
Well, as we've spoken a little bit, I do think that we're going to have an increased incidence of maybe separations, people considering divorce. There's going to be issues with people trying to decide what do they do with the elder members of their family who might need residential care. How do they want to handle that? Do they want to do it at home? Do they want to get somebody into their house? Do they want to put them in a facility? And those questions should always involve the senior as well, unless they are incapable, by the way. But in addition, as people start going back to work, you're going to find that there's some employees want to come back under these circumstances and some want others. So employers are going to have to deal with how to get their employees back into the workplace safely, and what are the conflicts that arise there. And coworkers may find problems with there are a lot of different views with regard to this whole COVID quarantine and stay-at-home orders and the shutdown, and whether it's valid, whether it's not. And coworkers may disagree, and they may disagree vehemently about that. So there's going to be those issues that as people start getting back together, they're going to have to deal more directly with people who might have different thoughts than they do.
Right.
And also credit cards, debt problems, I think will continue, landlord tenant issues, perhaps mortgages, maybe even homeowners association. If people have been really strapped and have had a hard time paying their homeowners dues, stuff like that. I think that will be a little bit of, we'll have to wade through that stuff for a while.
Yeah, I totally agree. Greg's got a great question. What's going to happen when the courts open and people are, and businesses starts facing evictions because they can't pay rent? So if you're getting evicted, right, that person is the person that should try to go through mediation before they go through that process. But if you're the one being evicted, how do you make that conversation with the person that's trying to evict you? You just say, hey, like, let's just go to mediation. Like, what would you recommend?
Absolutely. And most courts are going to require cases to be mediated prior to giving them an actual trial or hearing date, just because dockets are so big. And it's really a better way to handle things. Mm-hmm. Let people make their own decisions about how to move forward. Let them do it. Unless they absolutely cannot. The other thing about mediation is that if there's more than one issue, you can, if there's one thing you just can't come together on, but there's 5 things you can make your mediation agreement about those 5 and only leave that one thing to chance in court.
Right. And you reduce your thing. We got Jana. Jana heard us. She chimed in, not necessarily on the eviction, but we were talking earlier, is mediation sometimes covered by insurance? And she's like, yes, insurance covers mediation. So thank you, Jana, for chiming in and helping us with that process. So it's so important, right, to kind of really hone in the idea that it's a conversation starter, right? Mm-hmm. And we're in such difficult times between being at home, all that extra pressure, right? You're saying there's a lot of family dispute, family violence, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I guess my biggest question of, like, in your expert opinion, like, how would you then make that a possibility? Like, one of the questions Jennifer was having is, like, what if they don't budge? What if they're not moving? Like, mediation can make that happen, but I still want to know, what are some of the conversation starters that you would recommend, especially if you're in that space where you can't get away. Like, there's no room to get away when you're in quarantine. So what would you say would be the first opening a dialogue conversation?
Well, I think that we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. One, I think it's very, very, very important to be non-accusatory when you have these discussions, because even if you think it's that other person's fault entirely and you're the rational and reasonable one, it always takes 2 to tango. So making sure, maybe think about what you want to say and practice it a little bit to say, we seem to keep coming to this and we aren't agreeing on it right now, but it's something that we do need to make a plan and go forward with, because we live together, we're married, whatever the situation is, we're related. And what I would like to do is get a mediator involved so that we can resolve this before it's an even bigger problem. I don't want to change our circumstance. I want to be happy together. I want this. Another way to do it is, if that person is still reticent about the process, is if you've talked to a mediator, there's nothing wrong with the mediator emailing both parties and saying, hey, I've been approached with regard to working out this issue. Is this something you're open to? And what very often happens is, if you have one member of the family who wants to mediate and work things out, and you have another member of the family who is reticent or has a little bit of a question as to whether they want to do that, once they think somebody else has talked to you about it, they want to be heard too.
For sure.
So that can, that can work.
Okay, and that's kind of what I wanted to hear. I wanted to say, like, do you just talk about it and then get shut down, or do you go outside and start the conversation, right? Because it is dangerous. It is a very difficult topic, especially when you don't have that separation, right? So, great question from Jennifer Johnson is, can you do mediation virtually, and how are you doing?
Absolutely, you can. I'm of the opinion that in person is kind of the gold standard, but it works really well virtually. There's nothing wrong with mediating virtually. And I'm set up to do that through Zoom. It's kind of cool technology. So you absolutely can.
Perfect. Great answers. So timely. My favorite part
And
of the
actually,
show.
one thing about the virtual, Gabe, is with regard to elder law and elder situations, so often the family is not living in the same city anymore just
Oh,
because we're a mobile society. And that makes it really easy for everyone who needs to be involved in discussions about how the family moves forward.
perfect. And I'll just do a quick outline. You work with families, with employees, domestic violence, separations, partnerships, and now we're even talking about elder care and like what what to do, because those are all conflict resolutions that you can help mediate, correct?
Absolutely.
So my favorite part of the show is saying 3 things we can do now in the state of where we're at. Give us those, please, Beth.
I would say be very brave. Take the first step in moving towards resolving a conflict that is holding you back or decreasing your quality of life in some way. Just know that there's always a path forward. There is a way, there is a resolution. You may not be seeing it. And sometimes it's a process. Sometimes it's not easy, but everything is going to be better when you've found a way to work that out.
So timely, so important. I love your energy. I love the way you kind of just help bring things together. I think a lot of people are now going to be more comfortable understanding that you're not, even though you are a lawyer, you're not a lawyer. It's not an action. It's not you're not going to mediation is not a attack on someone.
Absolutely not. In fact, even though I am a lawyer, I am prohibited when I'm mediating from acting as an advocate for either side. I mean, I'm prohibited. I could have a problem if I did that. So a mediator should never do that.
Excellent. Text Expert21 to get in contact with her. She will do an over the phone interview to make sure that you guys are a good fit, to see how she can help you along. Beth, we're also going to release you. There's a bunch of questions online. You're going to chat in there and answer other questions we didn't have time to put on the air. But thank you so much for being part of Expert35 this morning.
Oh, thank you. I have a question.
Oh yeah.
But am I gonna answer the questions on video or on chat?
Yeah, we'll answer them on chat, so that you'll actually answer the questions. So just stick around. We'll jump back on there and answer some of the questions we didn't have time to put on the air. Okay.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you so much, Beth. Thanks for joining us. That was Beth talking about mediation. We've got all kinds of neat planning coming up. We've got people talking about travel and how to open that back up and why it's important. We're going to talk about nonprofits and getting involved in the community. Just get your voice heard. Thank you guys for joining us on Expert35. We look forward to seeing you guys soon.